This is Stage Left Planet, and I'm your host, Warita Wimbush. And today's episode is Eugenic Exploration and Population Control in Film. I'm gonna get you Sucka, 1987, Undercover Brother, 2002, They Clone Tyrone, 2023, and The Island, 2005. African Americans, as well as other marginalized, disenfranchised groups, have often been exploited for various types of experiments. Economic, medical, social experiments have utilized black people as guinea pigs to test dangerous and potentially dangerous things. For example, the Black Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s was a social experiment carried out as a litmus test to see if civil rights could be gained for gays, according to Bayard Rustin, who was a gay black civil rights leader who worked behind the scenes with Martin Luther King and who some consider to be the architect of the 1960s era civil rights movement. Indeed. But sadly, unbeknownst to the black mass majority, when they were out there in the streets getting beat down and killed and attacked, fighting for their rights, they didn't know that they were being beaten and killed, endangering their lives, their communities for gay rights being the end goal. This is why it makes sense that that particular group keeps hitching their wagon to social justice issues concerning blacks, then often overshadowing them with their own issue. And not only do they do this when hitching their wagon, put it like this, they hitch their wagons to other groups as well, other groups who are facing injustice, but they seem to have this concept that black and that the black civil rights issues and gay civil rights issues are common, when what affects the majority of black people does not affect the majority of gay people. So I would say that gay people need to keep following in line with Harvard, people like Harvard Milk, and having their own separate movement instead of hitching their wagons on to black people to stand on the platform for black civil rights to espouse gay civil rights. You know, I mean, they often overshadow blacks' concerns of blacks with their own issue, and it is parasitic and disingenuous to use black people as mascots and Trojan horses in such a way, human shields, to advance their own causes ahead of those that affect black people. I mean, and they aren't the only group that does that. Other marginalized groups have done the same. Now, let's discuss the movie. Art imitates life. Does it really? Well, let's see. The movies that we'll be discussing, as I named in the title, are I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, Undercover Brother, and They Clone Tyrone, and The Island. Now, there's an article that I've written for my blogs that accompany this video. So you can check out the articles as well. This article as well, and my other articles too. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel as well. Do not forget to like and subscribe to this channel. Now, I'm going to get you Sucka focuses on the economic exploitation of blacks. Undercover Brother, they clone Tyrone, and the island focuses on medical-based experimentation and psychological warfare. Now, let's talk about the issues of. Mm, let's talk about the issues of I'm gonna get you Sucker. Now, the main issue that impacted the community and I'm gonna get you Sucker is gold fever. Oh, well, I give you a list again. I give you the list. The main issue that of impacts the community and I'm gonna get you Sucker is gold fever, and the main issue that impacts the community Undercover Brother is malt liquor and chicken. And they clone Tyrone is cloning, and particularly, and I mean, if you're gonna see it, plus they give like, you can read this on Wikipedia, so this is not really a spoiler, but the main issue of they clone Tyrone is the cloning of missing persons, particularly black people. And in the island, the issue is cloning, breeding, and organ trafficking. Now, I'm gonna get you Sucker, Gold Fever. With I'm gonna get you Sucker, Keenan Ivory Wins makes the observation that the idolatry and coveting of luxury items has become an epidemic in the black community. Gold fever is the obsession with collecting as many gold chains as possible, not only in terms of the crimes of theft and murder, or the crimes of theft and murder that it has caused in the community, but gold fever has been a plague in the community. Hmm. Going over my article, Chad. My bad. The chains have become chains of vain insecurity and a scarcity mindset that becomes a prison to the wearer and eventually kills them. Now, in Undercover Brother, malt liquor and chicken. The Brotherhood. Well, it's spelled as if it's like in initials, but the Brotherhood. Now, people who follow Freemasonry, particularly the black fraternal organizations of Freemasonry, will have a totally different take on the use of the term the Brotherhood. However, in the movie, the Brotherhood is a black spy network who monitors and takes action against threats to the black community and has been observing a lone wolf crime fighter who was Undercover Brother. Each are fighting the same enemies, and their main antagonist is the Man, played by Chris Kattan from of Saturday Night Live. Eventually, they join forces to discover that the Man has been trying to stop the black General Warren Boutwell from running for president. Now he's basically like like the Colin Powell type character. And the way they try to stop him from running for president is using mind control. Mind control is real. The Bill Clinton has apologized for the mind control programs. that have taken place by the U.S. government, such as Project Monarch, Project Paperclip, and others. Now the man tries to direct Boutwell. He uses Boutwell. Let's see, how can I put this? He tries to direct Boutwell. He uses mind control to direct Boutwell to open and promote a fried chicken franchise through which he plans to use the mind control drug against the entire black community. Malt liquor, an inside joke about General Boutwell actor Billy D. Williams' real life promotion of Code 45 was causing low fertility, penis shrinkage, and chemical castration amongst black men. I remember those Code 45 commercials. I used to like them at the time. It's like TV had been whitewashed, and you didn't really see a lot of black people or black television shows. And so unless you were watching reruns, like if it's Sanford and Son and those shows that were out in the '70s were on TV, then you would see a TV show with a full black cast. But when the Cosby Show came out, when it debuted, you started seeing more and more TV shows with full black cast, and you were actually, even on the ones that had predominantly white cast, you were actually glad to see the one token person because at least you could say, okay, that's cool. They do at least have a black person, or even if they weren't black, a Latino and Asian, like head of the class, right? You glad to see Jawaharlal, and even in terms of people who are plus size, like you was glad to see Dennis on there. Facts of Life as well. Tootie was the only black character on there. He's glad to see her. Shows like Different Strokes were great because Arnold and Willis was black. Then Willis' friends from Harlem would visit. Then Willis got a girlfriend and stuff. And then it was just, I don't know, it was a fun show. I used to love it. Benson was cool too. That was one of my favorite shows when I was a little girl as well. And Give Me a Break. But when 227 and A Man came debuted, that was refreshing because those are two shows that had predominantly black casts. So they were wonderful. And it was good to see Sherman Hemsley again, too. Good to see him. And yes, it was good to see Sherman Hemsley again. So, at that particular time, So I used to be glad to see those Colt 45 commercials, you know. And so let's talk about they clone Tyrone. They clone Tyrone opens the conversation on human cloning to the mass public, making it no longer, or at least not as much, a fringe issue. It addresses the issues of black exploitation and medical apartheid in the black community. Medical apartheid has led to blacks being subjects to horrible experiments, as well as other forms of medical discrimination, such as neglect and organ trafficking across the African diaspora. I mean, when you look at Organ trafficking is like the other human trafficking that doesn't get a lot of media attention whatsoever. Sex trafficking does, but poor people are highly preyed upon for their organs and their genetic material. So this is what occurred. This is like what you see. And when you look at they clone Tyrone, it has been said, as we'll discuss when we talk about the movie The Island, that cloning serves many purposes, such as organ harvesting, and the antagonist is a secret government organization that has been spying on the black community. A team of black spies uncovers that the team of black spies consists of John Boyega's character, Jamie Foxx's character. I'll tell you their names. Let's see. They cloned Tyrone. See, I didn't refer to the actors, in there, but okay, John Boyega, Jamie Foxx, and Tiana Paris are the leading characters in the team of black spies that uncover the government cloning operation that targets black people. They go missing, and it's because they've been cloned. This is what I've learned so far. But the movie didn't come out until I think next month. The Island. The Island is intense. I couldn't even watch it. I couldn't even finish watching it. But Clone, and this is the clone's name, Lincoln Six Echo, discovers that the encapsulated proto-smart city, in which he and others live, is a population control and social engineering farm for wealthy elitists who are the benefactors for clones of themselves. They are not aware that they are clones. However, eventually, Lincoln discovers that he and the others are clones. And there's a lottery that occurs that rewards winners with a trip to the island. And Lincoln discovers that they were chosen to go to the island, or that those that were chosen to go to the island were being removed to serve the purposes of their benefactors, such as cloning, breeding, and organ harvesting, in addition to other agendas, probably so they can get out there and be they double and take the fall for whatever nefarious activities they are engaging in. Now, let's talk about real life. This may seem far-fetched until one recounts events such as the Tuskegee experiment, the Negro Project, Homer G. Phillips' Black Market adoption ring, forced and undisclosed sterilizations, organ harvesting, which is another face of human trafficking, which includes slavery. And we'll talk about slavery, Henrietta Lacks, and abortion, and as well as right to life violations and government spying on the public. Now, with the Tuskegee experiment, prominent black nurse Eunice Rivers convinced impoverished black men to participate in a medical study in which they would be treated for bad blood and any other health issues. Undisclosed to them was the true purpose of the study, to observe the effects of untreated syphilis on black men's health. Unofficially, Rivers became the head of the project because of her 40-year affiliation. Because of her 40-year affiliation, listen, and because of her 40-year affiliation, as a result of her continual insistence and justification of the study long after it had been found that penicillin was effectively treating syphilis, and many doctors abandoned the project due to its unethical violation. Okay, y'all, if y'all went to this article during watching this video, go back to it tomorrow because I got some edits to make. I got some edits to make. It's weird. You spend a long time writing something and you thinking, you go over it, checking for errors. Then you look back at it and you see, okay, I didn't get all the errors. But after you proofread it one time, you proofread it once or twice, after sitting there writing it, you tired of looking at it. Hmm. Anyway, so sorry about that, but go back and read it tomorrow. Um, in a nutshell, because she continued to work on that project, and even after the doctors that were her bosses, people that were her bosses, insisted that the program be shut down, she fought for its continual existence and justified its existence by saying, well, it's still treating the people in the community, right? And she didn't care that penicillin had been found to be effective to treat syphilis, right? So many of the doctors abandoned that project because of its unethical violation of patients' rights. However, Eunice, as we said, prolonged the project for profit with no regard for the men's health nor the health of their wives or offspring, and their wives contracted syphilis, their children had syphilis and had birth defects and developmental issues as a result of their mothers having had the untreated syphilis during their pregnancies. And this was a black woman that done it. Oh, just because a person's black don't mean that they are black like you. Okay, don't automatically trust somebody and to tell you, especially if they seem like they know what they talking about. Don't automatically trust somebody to tell you, to be honest with you and to be helping you just because they black and you black and demanding you stay loyal to anything that they're trying to do just because you black and they're black. If it's wrong, it's wrong. Turn your back. Now, let's talk about the Negro Project. Okay. This part is long, so I'm gonna tell it to you in short. The Negro Project was presented as a health outreach program for blacks in the South, and its agenda was to use birth control, particularly phone contraceptives, mainly as a method of population control among blacks. It was presented like it was to help black people space out their children, right? Space out their children and limit the number of children that they had for economic purposes. And for practicality, black women were glad for the contraceptives. However, they didn't realize the agenda behind it, considering especially that Malthusian eugenicists, who was aligned with anti-black, anti-assimilationist eugenic leaders within the black community, such as W.E.B. Du Bois, was expressed this. Now, that Malthusian eugenicist, boy, I must have been super sleepy or super tired trying to make it a point to publish this article. But Malthusian eugenicist Margaret Sanger. I apologize for this, man. Eesh. Malthusian eugenicist Margaret Sanger, right? She aligned with elitist, anti-black, assimilationist leaders, assimilationist eugenic leaders like W.E.B. Du Bois, who didn't consider himself to be a, a equal, or didn't consider the people of the black masses, the black majority, to be equal to him. He didn't interact with them. He didn't socialize with them. He looked down on them. He considered them to be ignorant Negroes. And he states this in Negroes and Birth Control. Negroes and Birth Control in 1939. He said, among the more intelligent class was a postponement of marriage, which greatly decreased the number of children. Today, among this class of Negroes, few men marry before 30, and numbers of them after 40. The marriage of women of this class has similarly been postponed. This is a class that he considers to be the black elite, the talented tenth that he coined the name for, right? Of which he coined the name for, or for whom he coined the name. Now, in addition to this is what he's saying. In addition to this, the low incomes which Negroes receive make bachelorhood and spinsterhood widespread, with the naturally resulting lowering in some cases of sex standards. Now here it comes. Here it is. On the other hand, the mass of ignorant Negroes still breed carelessly and disastrously, so that the increase among Negroes, even more than whites, is from that part of the population least intelligent and fit, and least able to rear their children properly. That's what W.E.B. Du Bois said. Not taking into consideration other factors that impact child rearing, such as income, right? Not looking at the fact that he wasn't, nor not looking at the fact that he wasn't far removed from slavery. That particular time he was around wasn't that far after slavery. And what were slaves? How were slaves treated? They were bred. There were even slave breeding farms, and for which the men got rewarded for getting as many women pregnant as possible. Even were put into competition with each other to see who could get the most women pregnant, the most women who were enslaved pregnant. Now, Margaret Sanger also determined who should reproduce by fitness. And when I say fitness, meaning who was fit, not like physically fit, well, physically fit, but who was most, I would say most perfect, right? Or least flawed to fit. Now, Malthusian eugenicists such as Sanger believe that resources and vital assistance should be withheld from those who are classified to be least fit. She considered those people to be unfit to procreate to be dysgenic. The following people groups are seen to be least fit in American society according to the principles of Malthusian eugenics. people with special needs, African Americans, poor whites, poor people, people of color, criminals, and let's see, to the Malthusian eugenicists. These people are useless, weak, feeble minded consumers who are dangerous, burdensome, and contribute nothing to society. Margaret Sanger wrote a whole chapter against whom she considered to be the feeble minded in her book, Pivot of Civilization. Y'all, you have to read it. It really talks a lot about her perspective of elitists and eugenicists. Ooh, excuse me. So sorry. Now, in chapter 4, Fertility of the Feeble Minded, she states that the feeble minded are the least intelligent and thoroughly degenerate. That's on page 82. She lists the following characteristics found among them as those which establish reasons that such persons shouldn't legally be allowed to procreate: abnormally high fertility rates, pauperism, epilepsy, mental defect, degeneracy, criminality, insanity, prostitution, and syphilitics. Degeneracy. Now, one would wonder, okay, now, Margaret Sanger mentions syphilitics, right? And Eunice Rivers let the poorest people in the South, the poorest black people in the South, she insisted that the Negro Project, continue on with those people continually being going untreated for syphilis, right? One wonders, was Eunice Rivers a black elitist in the sense of, or like this, was she a Malthusian eugenicist that was systematically using the Negro Project to execute population control in the black community? Very interesting. Degeneracy is derided by Sanger. Sanger gives no account for external factors, no deeper causative biological factors. Aside from being an imbecile, which is her self-righteous, elitist, sociopathic personal opinion, that would influence a person's behavior, such as a change in their life circumstances beyond their control. She views the world in terms of the miscontextualization of the concept of survival of the fittest. She even wrote a letter, which is listed here, to Dr. C.J. Gamble in 1939. And boy, they were really on it in 1939. And not in a good way either. Not in a good way. She said, okay, I'm feeling not too fantastic today. So if I seem a little slowed down, I apologize. But I wanted to do this video and I keep prolonging it. Okay. She wrote, the minister's work is also important and he should be trained perhaps by the Federation as to our ideals and the goal that we hope to reach. We do not want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members. Why was she concerned about people being rebellious, thinking for themselves rather than just taking what she says as the gospel truth? And she talked about the value of the influence of black ministers. She said the project will hire 3 or 4 colored ministers, preferably with social service backgrounds, with engaging personalities, to travel throughout the South and propagandize for birth control. Since the most successful educational approach to the Negro is through religious appeal. So she's taking advantage of the trust that black people have in God and in their pastors, and wants to pay the pastors to misguide their congregation, their congregants. Shame on her. That's terrible. Now, her reasoning was that it was better to have black skin with which the black majority could identify, subtly discuss the economic hardships of being black, and then conflate them with black procreation and the cost of child rearing. Now she took the easy way out. Limit the number of children that black people have and poor people have, right? Rather than address the issues as to why they struggle economically, which was due to racism. But then that harkens back to her being a eugenicist, which is a concept that spawned from Darwinism, and especially social Darwinism. You know, that applies the idea of survival of the fittest, when Charles Darwin said that, even when he used the term racist, from what I've read, I don't know, I could be wrong, but it seemed like it may have, well, I don't know, I have to go back over it, but he meant survival of the fittest in a biological sense. No, it is what I've researched, and I've written an article about that as well. And about it was applied to science and evolution and adaptation. Now, Herbert Spencer took it upon himself to apply it to society to justify discrimination against people of color and any other group that was targeted for disenfranchisement and discrimination. Now, the Homer G. Phillips black market adoption ring involved the stealing of black babies belonging to mothers living in poverty to sell to affluent black people who wanted to adopt, and no telling who else they sold them to and for what reason those people even wanted them. Some people are weird and do weird things. Black nurses and doctors were involved in the trafficking of these babies. They felt the child would have a better life with the buyers. At least that's what they claim. That it was because they felt the child would have a better life with the buyers than their biological families. The biological families were usually told that the baby had died. And let's not forget they were getting paid to sell them babies. Meaning the doctors and the nurses was getting paid to sell them babies. Now, here's the article, Kidnapping and Illegal Adoption of the Babies of the Black Poor. Black mothers wondered if their babies were stolen in decades-old mystery. 18 black women who were told decades ago that their babies had died soon after birth at a St. Louis hospital, the Homer G. Phillips Hospital, now wonder if the infants were taken away by hospital officials to be raised by other families. Zella Jackson Price, who was 26 in 1965 when she gave birth at Homer G. Phillips in St. Louis, it has been the focal point of this issue. She's been the one leading the charge on this, leading the way on this issue. And I say good for her. Now, forced and undisclosed sterilizations. Here are two articles. Unwanted sterilization and eugenics programs in the United States, and the U.S. government's role in sterilizing women of color. Black, Puerto Rican, and Native American women have been victimized. Fannie Lou Hamer, the civil rights activist, she experienced that. She called it a Mississippi appendectomy. She went to the hospital for one procedure, and when she left, she discovered that once she was once she left, she discovered that she had been given us and my mother had one. Why? And she would mention it quite a bit. Hysterectomy. She had been given a hysterectomy and couldn't have children. So she and her, Fannie Lou Hamer too, had been given a hysterectomy without her consent for no reason, for no health reason whatsoever. Now, organ harvesting, another phase of human trafficking. Slavery is the form of human trafficking most associated with the black community. Organ harvesting is the new vehicle of the black bodies for profit industry. Aside from sex trafficking, the most frequently used methods of the human trafficking of black people are organ harvesting, including full body harvesting via science donation, and abortion. Globally, as we discussed earlier, globally, poor people are often pressured into donating their organs and genetic material for paltry sums compared to billions that companies such as BioLife Plasma make. Worse is the abortion industry, who uses despair, disinformation, and misinformation and other misdirecting propaganda to prey upon pregnant women in crises. They scare the women. They scared the women into paying its abortion clinics to kill the babies. Next, they butcher those children, some while still alive, especially for brain harvesting by cutting open the face, no anesthesia or sedation given. Then they sell the baby's body parts and organs for profit. Now, Henrietta Lacks was a cervical cancer patient whose cells were collected from a biopsy of a cancerous growth on her cervix at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Dr. George Otto Gay performed the biopsy and collected the cells, also being the first to work with the cells in medical research. Hold on a second. Also being the first to work on the cells in medical research, right? Gay observed that the cells rapidly reproduce and live longer than any other cells collected at the time. He labeled them HeLa cells. From that point, HeLa cells were used to create pharmaceuticals. Trillions were made. Some sources say billions, but I say trillions. Lax nor her family was compensated because consent was not needed from patients for the use of their genetic material in other medical research and for profit activities. Right to life violations. Euthanasia and assisted suicide has been increasingly impacting those who don't want it or may not be of sound mind or maturity to make that decision. The rights of patients as well. Persons living in abject poverty who are seeking financial assistance, persons living with mental illness, persons with disabilities who are seeking accommodations, minors, and persons who cannot verbally communicate. Now, the rights of those persons are in question because they have been recommended, they have had euthanasia and assisted suicide recommended to them, particularly in countries such as Canada. They've had their right to life and right to change their minds about choosing assisted suicide and euthanasia, as well as their families, guardians, and caregivers have had to um have had their right to choose life usurped by the medical industrial complex. Laws such as the state I live in, Louisiana's definition of death statute, Title 9, Section 111, it states, let's see, the definition of death is it declares a person dead based on the opinions of a physician licensed in the state of Louisiana. I have the act and the article, right? Because it's lengthy. And Michigan has a similar law called determination of death that says virtually the same thing. Now, Louisiana's law, it says a person will be considered dead in the announced opinion of a physician duly licensed in the state of Louisiana based on ordinary standards of approved medical practice. The person has experienced an irreversible cessation of spontaneous respiratory and circulatory functions. In the event that artificial means of support preclude a determination that these functions have ceased, a person will be considered dead if, in the announced opinion of a physician duly licensed in the state of Louisiana, based upon ordinary standards of approved medical practice, the person has experienced an irreversible total cessation of brain function. Death will have occurred at a time when the relevant functions ceased. In any case, when organs are to be used in a transplant, then an additional physician, duly licensed in the state of Louisiana, not a member of the transplant team, must make the pronouncement of death unless a hospital has adopted a written policy allowing a single physician, duly licensed in the state of Louisiana, not a member of the transplant team, may make the pronouncement of death. In all cases in which a hospital written policy provides that a single physician makes the pronouncement of death, such policy shall also require an opinion by a second physician, not a member of the transplant team, as to the candidacy for the process of organ donation. The medical pronouncement of death by a coroner may also be based on personal observation, information, or statements obtained from coroner investigators or registered nurses. physician assistants, or emergency medical technicians at the scene who are reporting from first-hand observation of the physical condition of the deceased. The time of death shall be reported as the time that the death was reported or discovered. The name of the personnel that the coroner is relying on shall be noted on the coroner's investigative report. Michigan has a similar law called determination of death. It's almost verbatim of the Louisiana's law. Detroit mother Lashana Lowry fought Michigan's determination of death law to prevent the ending of her son's life, Titus Jermaine Cromer Jr., who had suffered a traumatic brain injury and who was 16 at the time. She gained an emergency court order against the hospital to stop them from removing her son's life support, and then had a tracheostomy and feeding tube procedures done, that would make him eligible to be transferred to a rehabilitation facility. Read about it. Now, there's a link to BobbySchindler.com article. Teen at the center of right to life court battle between mom and hospital dies. Titus Cromer Jr., 16, passed away on Friday, just days after he was relocated to a Livingston County Rehabilitation Center. It has shown some signs of hope. Bobby Schindler is the brother of Terry Schiavo, whose right to life battle brought the issues of assisted suicide and euthanasia to the international spotlight. And there's also a video in this article from the Stivers Homestead YouTube channel that discusses a man whose doctors nearly killed him by overprescribing medication to him. Then later found out that their actions were unorthodox, and in fact they were being incentivized by the pharmaceutical industry to prescribe as many medications as possible. And I have a long quote from the video. I'll go ahead and read it. The new doctor looked at his medical report and his history and was baffled about the amount of drugs and the dosage of drugs that he was on, and said that this is probably the reason you were feeling so bad, and went to the ER. He didn't even have high blood pressure. He was borderline blood pressure, something that could have been managed very easily without any kind of medicine. So the new doctors got him on generics, got him a much lower dosage. Now, please read the comment section of that video. Here's one particular woman's comment about her father's doctors trying to declare him medically dead. She said, several years ago, my dad had pneumonia and was in ICU for over 3 months. He was only 68 at the time and fully insured. Very long story short, they illegally changed his medical records, had his wife sign a do not resuscitate order against his medical wishes, which were on record, lied and told me he was brain dead and his organs were failing. They lied. Told me I was selfish for not turning off the ventilator so he could pass. I threatened to hire an attorney and sue them into oblivion. Then I called a meeting and fired the entire ICU team. Demanded they immediately stop all meds and wean him off the vent. My dad not only woke up, but was able to give his wife all passwords to their bills. The doctor's mouths were on the floor. He is 100% healthy. Praise God. Yes, indeed. Praise God. Advocate for your loved ones. Yes, please advocate for them. Research everything yourself. Question everything. Unfortunately, I no longer trust doctors because of the absolute hell they put our family through. I don't trust them no more either after what happened to my mother, who went to the hospital with no major breathing problems, but she had a lot of fluid. Needed the fluid drained or removed. They didn't at the hospital. They didn't focus on helping her get rid of the fluid. They kept trying to put her on the BiPAP machine, and she couldn't hardly breathe. And at night, because they didn't give her medication at the right time of day. She usually would take her medication at night, but they kept giving it to her in the morning, so she couldn't sleep. So she had a hard time sleeping at night, and because she was sleep deprived along with being in some kind of state due to her having that fluid on her and stuff, she would take the mask off to catch a breath instead of leaving it on. And then people killed my mom. So I don't trust them either. And I kept trying to tell them what was occurring with her before she went to the hospital, and I was ignored. And then they kept telling me, "Hey, well, we asked your mother," and I told them, tell me, call me, and then they waited till it was during a hurricane to call me left and right, and I had a Walmart family mobile phone, and my service was in and out, and all of a sudden they put her in the ICU, and she didn't, she died. She died when they couldn't really get in contact with me, get in touch with me, and so it was horrible. It was so horrible. I'm like, why is somebody listening to me? They talking to mama. Mama not quite in her right mind. She not quite in her right mind because of her being sick right now. So even though she sound like she is of sound mind, when she talking to you, she is not. She's just really, really, really smart, extremely smart, and can conduct the conversation with you when she's not quite of her right mind. So this person went on to say, had I listened he would be dead. I told the doctors, although you have a God complex, you are not God. Only God would decide when my dad's time is up. God definitely humbled them. And praise God. God knew his will for my mother, and I trust my mother in God's hands. So I don't feel let down by God at all. But I think those doctors, especially considering it was during the pandemic, no telling what kind, they seem to have been treating her as if she were a COVID patient, putting her on the ventilator, kept intubating her, and kept giving her the BiPAP mask and all that stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute, when mama left here, she ain't had no major breathing problems, and y'all, even when my mother would tell them things to help her that was actually correct, like give her medication at night, they ignored her. She called the nurses just to have them bring her something to drink, some ice. I saw them. But I have health issues myself. So, and at that time, I was really not feeling well or doing well. So I didn't even have the fight in me I usually would have. I needed help. I reached out to her regular doctor because of HIPAA. He basically ignored me and tried to distance himself from me. I even contacted him on Instagram because I used to follow him on Instagram anyway, just in case we needed his help for anything. Had to keep track of where he was because he's in the military and he would get deployed to get sent to like other countries and stuff. So I would be keeping track of where he was. And I needed help, and nobody was, not even my family. It's like, I was talking to, it was like I was talking to dummies, basically. And I say dummies, I may as well have been talking to mannequins or something because I'm like, what is going on? Why is nobody listening to me? Why is everybody ignoring me? Even when my mother passed away, it's like people just was like, oh, well, you have to move on, and I'm like, my mother just passed away. You all whine and complain about some foolish stuff. A lot of stuff that y'all is y'all fault that you dealing with anyway. And you telling me some stuff about you have to move on and all this stuff, and looking at me like I'm crazy. And I mean, I have health issues. I don't go into detail about what they are. My mother knew, but I have health issues. So, and that's one thing I don't like. But anyway, government spying on the public. Let's talk about that. This is my favorite part of this whole video in this article. The government spy, I'm going to get proper too and cute. The government spying specifically on black people may sound far-fetched until one recounts such cases of spying as wiretappings of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. The May 3rd, 1917, the United States Army started a spy program which was to operate within the United States. Emmett Scott, advisor of Black Affairs to the Secretary of War during Woodrow Wilson's administration. He was head of the Boule during his time as advisor of Black Affairs. And he gathered information on the actions of African Americans via a network of African American informants in churches and organizations. And he spied on black soldiers. Yes, that happened. It happened. Now, these movies, I said these three movies in the article, but that's because I thought about the island and added it. I added that one. But these movies highlight the fact, well, the movies we discussed earlier, highlight the fact that legitimate conspiracy against the black community and the mass public, all American citizens, can occur. Beware. Oh, excuse me. Beware of smart cities, which will make spying much easier. This has occurred in places such as China and Japan. Smart cities are surveillance cities. It's an article, right? Article on foreignpolicy.com says smart cities are surveillance cities. When everyone and everything is connected, the door is open to all kinds of digital threats. And on ft.com, is exporting the article exporting Chinese surveillance, the security risks of smart cities. Y'all, I'm going to get a little bit of rest up, And this has been Stage Left Planet. I'm your host, Warita Winbush. Focus on God.